Okay, right. We will make a start. So so last time, just to recap what we need to know for this evening. So the Mishnah was basically talking about, the Mishnah Daf Daled on the base was talking about the case of someone who surrounds someone else, and then he builds. So in other words, the simple scenario is that you have a field surrounded on all sides by another field, and he builds walls all the way around, except for one wall. So the Mishnah says you can't obligate the other guy, the guy in the middle, to pay for that wall because it wasn't a wall that he asked you to build. And it hasn't actually helped him because it's only three sides. That's what we said in the Mishnah. It's only three sides. It's only once you have the fourth side there that you can then say, right, the fact that now I've benefited because my field now has a fence all the way around, and we explained that because it's a field amongst other fields, right? There's no, it's what we call in a bika. So therefore there's no problem of hezek riyah, some people looking into your property, but there is a need for a field for simple protection to stop the sheep coming in and eating the crops and that sort of thing, right? So we discussed all this in great detail last time. And basically, so we said, the situation only it only arises when you can actually be mechayev the person in the middle to participate in paying the cost when he's actually benefited, which is when you have walls all the way around. You've got all four walls, right? The main issue that between the Tanakam and Rabbi Yossi and the Mishnah was really the level of chiyuv, right? The level of obligation, right? So that's basically how it seems clear according to most of the way the Gemara gave in the end really four different ways that Rabbi Yossi might be different to the Tanakam. But according to most of them, Rabbi Yossi is stricter than the Tanakama because Rabbi Yossi says, "Im omad v'godesh ravis megalgelin olav esakol." You have to make him pay, full 50%. So there were different ways of understanding what exactly the difference between them is. But that was only that most of the Gemara was only actually in the view of Chia bar Rav. There was two opinions in the Gemara. Huna says, in other words, what does he have to participate? When you say he has to participate in paying the cost, what does that mean? Whatever the guy built the fence with? Let's say he built it with Jerusalem stone. I can turn around and say, I would have been happy with a very basic fence. Why on earth are you making me pay 50% of your expensive wall? We didn't need a wall like that. So the first image Rav Huna says, whatever he builds, that's what you got to pay 50% of once you've entered a scenario when you actually have to pay, like for example, when the fourth wall is there, right? Whereas Chia bar Rav says, no, you can turn and say, I'm only going to participate a cheap wall, the one side wall that I would have built. I'm not going to participate in paying more than the type of wall that I would have built. And our problem really was according to Chia bar Rav, how can you have a situation where the Tanakama is even less than that? Yeah, if he builds a false wall, well, how can you be less than a basic wall, right? And we brought various different ways of learning in the Gemara. But the main thing you need to know for this Gemara, right, as we'll see, is that the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi according to Rav Huna. Okay, that means to say. Rabbi Yossi is the strict, according to most opinions, is the stricter view. If you build the fourth wall, you've got to pay the full 50%. And you can't turn around and say, I would have built a cheaper wall. Whatever the other guy has built, you've got to pay half that wall. Again, only in a situation where you've actually benefited, where you're the one who's owning, you're the one who's benefited from having being closed on all four sides. And the Gemara is going to prove effectively that's the halacha through a story. So at the top of the next Amud, Runya akfe ravinos. It's really the very first word on Hey Amud Aleph. Runya akfe ravino me'abaru chosav. Runya was Ravina really. Ravina had fields around Runya. We're familiar with Ravina, less so with Runya. Ravina, of course, is one of the most famous Amoraim. Ravina and Ravashi, the last generation of Amoraim, who basically put together the Gemora, the Bavli, hugely famous. But we're less familiar with Ravina's neighbor. Ravina's neighbor, in a physical sense, Ravina's neighbor was a man called Runya, an Amora, Runya. He's named in the Gemara, which means he must have been of a very high status. You know that. If someone is named in Shas, the general klal is that they're already, way up there, right? There are lots of people who aren't named. There was a certain person, the whole Gavra. There's, if an Amora is named, even if you only mention once or twice, I don't know how often Runya is mentioned. I think he's mainly mentioned in connection with Ravina about the land use. But anyway, Runya, so Ravina surrounded him on all. So his fields were surrounding him on all four sides. So Ravina had these four sides around him. Omalei, he said to him, he built a wall around, around Runya's field in the middle, between his field and Runya's field. Omalei said to him, Havli kama de gadri. He says, give me however much I built, whatever I've built. In other words, he said to him, the halacha is like, as Rav Huna explained, Rabbi Yossi, you've got to pay up according to once all four walls are there, you've got to pay up 50% of the type of wall I built. So go on then, pay up, right? Le'yoevle didn't give him any money. He refused. He point blank refused. Thank you very much. No, I'm not going to give you anything. So he said to him, okay, listen, at least havli lefi demei konim bezol. He did what many of us would have done, sort of taking him to court. You try and get the maximum out of him that you can. So he says to him, all right, listen, at least give me, demei konim bezol. Give me the cheap fence at least. Le'yoevle refused to give him that as well. Havli agana tirusa. So you give me at least the money that you'd have to pay to guard the place. You have to stop animals coming in or whatever, something, so at least that, I've saved you that, haven't I? Le'yoevle refused that as well, right? So he wouldn't pay at all. Yom echad havakogoda dikli. It happened one day that this Runya was cutting down dates from his palm tree. Omalei said to him, Larissa, he said to his sharecropper, the guy who was working for him, he said to him, Zil shokol minei kibura da'ahini. He said to him, that means Ravina said to the guy who was working for him, he said, go and take from him a kibura da'ahini, right in front of him. Go in front of his face and take a bunch of dates from him. Ozal lasuye, he went to take it. Rama Beikola, Ravina starts shouting, what are you doing? He says to Ravina's employee, how on earth can you steal? I mean, listen, you're working for the greatest rabbi in town, in the country, and you're busy stealing my date. You're stealing my dates, right? He shouted at him. He said to him, so Ravina turned to Runya and said, Golis daitach, you've now revealed by complaining, that you're quite happy with the fence, right? That you like the palm trees are important to you, right? And you want to protect them. Even if it was just goats trying to get in, right? Wouldn't it need, even if you weren't worried about thieves, right? You're just worried about protection from animals. You'd still need to guard them. You'd still need protection. Amalei said to him, Iza ba'alma, he says, if it's just ordinary, let's say goats, la'achluye boya. They just need to shout them. You just need to tell them to go away. You don't need to do anything else, all right? You just need to shout at them. So you don't need a fence. Ravina said back to him, do you not need a person to shout? You have to pay something, right? To do something, to stop them coming in. So he said to him, at the end of the day, how is it that you can pay nothing towards the cost of my fence? Clearly, it's benefited you. Also, he came in front of Rava. Omalei said to him, Zil paise b'mai difais. He said to Runya, Rava Paskin to Runya in the case, and said, you got to go and pay, go and give him what he was happy to receive. In other words, he said to you that at least pay me aga netira, the money you would have had to pay for someone to guard. So he said to him, at least pay me that. At least pay me that cost. But if not, he said, if not, I will judge you like Rav Huna alibud Rav Yossi, right? I will judge you the strictest level, which was Rav Huna, according to Rav Yossi, that you've got to pay the full 50% of all four walls, right? Of all four walls, according to the material that was used to build the walls. That's what he said to him. So, so there's a few interesting and important points which come out of this. Let's see Rashi first. The Rashi is the second line from the top. Ravina had four fields, around the four borders of Runya. the Godron, and he built a wall in between them. Havli Kama de Godri said to him, give me Kama de Godri. Karavuna Libra Yossi says, pay up the whole amount, the 50%. Like Ravuna says, according to Rabbi Yossi, Domaru says, pay according to every whatever he built. The Hochi came along, because that's what we hold halachically. Could the Muchach come on, as the Gemora, as you can tell from the Gemora later on. One day, he was cutting down dates from the palm tree in his field. He told his and he told his oris, the sharecrop. He said to him, go and cut down this bunch of dates from Runya in front of him. Roma Beikola, go aboy Runya Barisi the Ravina. He started shouting and says, what are you doing? You're stealing. Ravina said, you've shown that the palm trees are very important to you, and you want to protect them. Even if you're not worried about thieves, you have to protect them from the goats. Right? That's something you needed to do, and I've helped you. He said, all I need to do is just have someone shouting at them like a scarecrow or whatever, just saying that, they're just to keep them away. But you need a person, he said, to tell them off. Rashi tells you the source of this strange word, la'achluye. The Targum of the Yareim is basically means to shout. The Targum says it means achli. Or to announce, to shout. The Targum he uses that translation of achli. So that's what it means. But Rava Paskand, in this case, he said, it's good for you, and you're lucky that he's agreed to take the payment of the minimum amount, which is the amount you would have had to pay a guard. He's been agreed to that. And if not, I'll make you pay the full whack. Hagos, so there's a Hagor, as I mentioned before, in Basra you have a number of times and sort of edited or inserted notes in Rashi from Rashi's grandson. I believe it's Rashi's grandson, I think it's the Rashbam. And he says, the inference is that that's the halacha. And he says that's Rabbeinu Chal Paskins as well. That this is in fact the halacha. So I mean, let me just ask you: do you have any questions about the Rava's psak, the Rava's ruling here? I mean, you understand the story, right? He's trying to get out of it. Ravina's proven to him that clearly you're bothered, and we explained last week that the whole principle upon which this entire sugya rests is this simple fact, is the simple fact that when you benefit someone else, right, when you do something which is, we saw last time the run, if you remember, right, the run explained it really, really beautifully, that when you go into someone else's field and you do something that is beneficial to the person, okay, it's clearly beneficial. And he doesn't object. That's the key thing. He doesn't tell you to go away, knock this wall down, right? Then he can't come along later and say, I'm going to take all the benefit and not pay for it. Yeah, that's the guiding principle of the whole sugya, right? Then the only question is how much, what level of obligation? Yeah, the whole wall, whatever it is. And we discussed last time, is that different on a common Rabbi Yossi, whether he has to pay for his part in the first three or not? We finish off with Rabbi Yossi, 50%. It would seem of the whole lot. And by the way, maybe no difference who builds the fourth wall, right? Meaning we said that if the nikif, the one in the middle, builds the fourth wall, then it's more obvious because he's shown he cares. He's gone and put up the last wall, right? But even if the makif builds the last wall, that's just clear from the Gemora here, right? Even if the makif builds the last wall and the guy doesn't do anything, he still has to pay his share. But do you find anything strange about Rav, the way Rav's ruling, how Rav decided the case, what he says?
Why doesn't he just paskin the halacha straight away with the stricter one? According to Rav Huna, according to Rav Yossi.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the obvious immediate question here, right? Right. If the halacha is like Rav Huna Libid Rav Yossi, right? You've got to pay. So why does he say, listen, it's better for you that you take this, this in this direction, because otherwise, take what he's offered, because otherwise I'm going to make you pay the full whack. So, I don't know. Does anyone, I don't have a clear answer to this. I don't know if anyone has any suggestions why Rava Paskins in this way. I mean, it could be. I'm just thinking. You see, at the end of the day, it shows how careful you've got to be when when you make an offer. When you make an offer, right? No, I mean that's. I was just reading the Gemora, right? Ravina makes an offer here. Yeah, he could have at the first stage when the guy said I refuse to pay. Yeah, I'm not going to participate. He could have said let's go to Beis Din. He didn't do that. He said, okay, let me get something from you. So the problem is once you've done that, it's very difficult to go afterwards and argue. I don't know whether there are parallels in civil law in this kind of, once you've made an offer, it's presumably a formal offer. Okay, I'll accept. I'll accept. Some of you must have been involved in deals like this before. Once you made an offer, you know what I mean? How do you, pardon?
Yeah, it was open for acceptance. Yeah.
It's like if you're bargaining on a house or whatever it is, right? If you put an offer in, or if you're prepared to, you indicate you're prepared to accept an offer. I don't know whether nowadays it's got to be formalized in writing. I don't know whether how it works or not. I don't know whether,
Technically no, but in property there is specific rules about having it agreement in writing. But generally, when you give an offer, it's open for acceptance, and it doesn't have to be in writing.
Right. So again, yeah, I don't know how this plays out halachically, right? It's just very interesting. It seems to be that because Ravina made the offer and said, at least I'll be prepared to accept, something less, the amount you would have paid a guard, a shomer, right? I'm prepared to accept that. It seems that he's kind of like that if the guy then agrees to that, then that's what he's got to stay with. Yeah.
It may be that he like mochal part of his debt. It's like a mechila.
Yeah, it could be that it is medin mechila. Exactly. It could be that it is exactly that. It's medin mechila. It's like he's forgiving and he's sort of saying, well, this is I'm letting you off this part. And there's another problem here though as well. Even leaving that part aside, and this we'll see Tosfos has a problem with, is that Rava seems to almost paskin like a threat. Do you know what I mean? He says, accept what he's offered, and if not, I will paskin for you like Rav Huna. So again, we have a bit of a problem here, right? Because like that, if the halacha is like that, so what's the threat? Why is he threatening him? Right? So let's learn this Tosfos, because it's a very important Tosfos, because it has relevance other places as well. It's the second Tosfos, V'iloi. He says, V'iloi do'enon alachok Rav Huna v'aliba de Rabbi Yossi. So he says, you got it? Yeah, the second Tosfos, right? K'tzas hoyanireh, sheloi la'avchido ho'omekein. It looks a little bit, says Tosfos, that he wasn't trying to scare him. Midoloi ka'omar, from the fact that he didn't use phrases that are found elsewhere in Shas. Sometimes you find the Amoraim or deliberately say something that is almost it's not necessarily a real psak. It's to scare them. So v'lo magvino la'apadno minoch. He says, go and pay, or otherwise I'll take your whole I think it's your whole palace or a house from you, or whatever. There's a phrase. This is actually a Gemora later on, I think, Kufman Aleph. Basically, he says, if you don't listen, I'll do in cherem. So that's like a threat. Yeah, Silua delo mavodamo is a wonderful turn of phrase used in the Gemora. It basically means a thorn that doesn't make you bleed, which is an euphemism for cherem, putting someone right. It's as painful as a wound, but doesn't bleed, right? If you find that phrase, that's like to scare, right? It's a threat. If you don't pay up, you're going to be. This will happen. He says, in a lot of Gozel you find in Sukkah that Shmuel said to these people who were selling hadassim, Ashfu zinaychu. There was a problem there. It's a famous Gemara in Sukkah where they were busy trying to. There was a what's it called going on? There was a cartel or whatever. They were busy. They cornered the market for hadassim. That's a good thing to do in theory. On Erev Sukkot. Yeah, if you buy up all the hadassim, yeah, then you can make a serious amount of money. Anyway, he threatened them, and he said, you better all agree to the same price. He said, I'll pass him if you like Rabbi Tarfon, who had, I can't remember exactly how it works, but there was this halacha there that he doesn't, according to him, there would be no necessity for whatever it was they were trying to do with the Adasim. And there it says he was trying to scare them. He says, here it seems Rashi, here it seems to be this was actually the halacha, as Rashi says. And furthermore, and the fact that he says to him, Zil go and appease him with that which he agreed to be appeased with. Mashma, the implication is that according to the strict letter of the law, he was entitled to more, except for the fact that he'd already agreed to it. So the phraseology here says Tosfos implies that he was saying to him, look, you're lucky. But really, the halacha is not like that. Really, the halacha is you should have to pay the full whack. So that's how we understand this Gemara. Okay.
Sorry.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. The problem is that the only reason why Ravina changed the amounts that he was willing to accept was because Runya didn't actually agree to anything. Every time Runya kept quiet, Ravina's sort of offer or of what he was willing to accept changed. So.
Yeah. So what if it changed?
So there's no acceptance there as such on Runya's part. He's not part of the deal. He's not accepting any of it.
Right, but the offer was still there, right? I mean, meaning he still made that offer, and that's why. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm understanding you correctly, but maybe Rava, you're saying maybe Rava is using this because he thinks, look, I'm just going to try and get something out of this guy.
Yeah, possibly.
I mean,
something is better than nothing.
Yeah, it's always a dangerous place to be with a neighbor. With a neighbor, right? That's always the dilemma with a neighbor, because you got to live with this guy. But either way, this is.
I mean, I could hear Rabbonim saying this nowadays to one litigant. Count yourself lucky because actually, according to the strict halacha, you should pay more. But
that's right.
he's given you enough. I can hear people saying that. So
100%, exactly.
I mean, it's not a psak though. He's doing that as a way. I presume he's trying to make shalom between the two of them, rather than giving a sort of psak halacha there. So,
yeah, the question is really is that if it must be that Ravina wasn't entitled to more. Otherwise, that's how Rava presumably would have paskened. Meaning, it must be that not that he wasn't entitled to more. The strict letter of the law, he was entitled to more, but it must be that because he'd made the offer. If the guy, Runya, accepted that now, there wasn't much Ravina could do about it. That seems to be the case, yeah. But right. I see what you mean. I see what you mean. He's as you say, he's trying to make shalom, but it shows you the complexities involved always.
So you're saying Rava paskin according to Rabbi Yossi then, or you're saying he didn't paskin according to Rabbi Yossi?
So the way Rashi and Tosfos understand is that when he says to him, "Go and pay the amount that he agreed to accept, and if not, I will paskin for you. I will follow the law, the halacha as it should be, which is paying the full whack." That was the psak. That was the psak, and he was simply saying, "Listen, you're lucky. You're lucky.
Yeah, count yourself lucky." Right.
Exactly. That's right. 100%. Okay. But now we go from this Gemara to another story between Runya and Ravina. A very short 4 lines for the Mishnah, but it's a really fascinating sugya about what the concept of Lifnim Meshuras Adin and Vasisa Yoshav Tov. So let's just look at the case, and the case itself is quite difficult to work out. There's lots of different ways of understanding how it's not complicated. It's just there are different ways of understanding the phrasing of the Gemara. Runya Zovan Ara Amitzra de Ravina. So Runya bought land on the border of Ravina. So he bought land on Ravina's border. Ravina is looking mishum dino de bar mitzvah. So Ravina thought to remove him because of the halacha of a bar mitzvah. Now the halacha of bar mitzvah is that basically if you own a plot of land, okay, and there's land up for sale on your border, then you have the first rights to buy that land, okay? That's what dinner de bar mitzvah is. You are the bar mitzvah. Mitzvah is a border. Yeah. That's why Mitzrayim is bordered. This whole idea. It's always, you've heard these ideas before. The whole thing about Mitzrayim being limited. Yeah. Mitzarim. So there you are. So this is what it is. So the bar mitzvah means that you have first rights. Now, in this case, Runya's already bought the land. Ravina comes along and says, excuse me, he knocks on his door and he says, hold on a second, my land, my existing property was next to this field, and therefore I should get first rights. And therefore I would like to remove you, pay you the money, and take this field. That was what he wanted to do. Omri Rav Safra, brother Rav Yevel or Ravina, Rav Safra, the son of Rav Yevel, said to Ravina, so he turned round to Ravina and said, not so fast. Omri Inshi, people say, Arba letzila, Arba letzalala. Now, this is where I get, the whole difficulty with this Gemora is the translating of that line, really, what it means. People say 4 zuz for someone who is involved in the working of leather, whether he is poor or whether he is rich, whether he's poor or rich, right? So this is the question of what the question is. What exactly that means? What do we mean when we talk about what was he exactly? How was he exactly paskening? What was he saying? And what does it mean? What has it got to do with someone working leather, a tanner, which is what it seems to be talking about? Okay, so the before we see Rashi, what I want to show you, let me just want to show you what. Just one second. I want to show an introduction to this whole piece. Yeah, a second. Yeah. Okay, so let me just see if I can share the screen here. There we go. Can you all see that? Yeah. So this is the Ramban al Torah. The Ramban al Torah says, what is it? Yeah, Ramban al Torah. Can you make it? Can you see the whole thing, or is the thing in the way? Yeah, can you see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, very good. Right. So what the Ramban says, the pasuk says in Devarim, "Bosisa Yoshev Tov Be'nei Hashem." You should do that which is upright and good in the eyes of Hashem. He says, Al Derech HaPshat, says the Ramban, Yom HaTishmeru Mitzvahs Hashem, Eidosav Chukosov. You should guard the mitzvah of Hashem, his testimonies, his statutes, Techam Masyasan Ases HaTov HaYoshev Einov Belvad. Olamani Tavloch, you do what is good and right in the eyes of Hashem. Havtocha, it's a promise. It's a promise, right? That when you keep the mitzvahs of Hashem, then it will be good for you as well. It'll be good for you. You do a good thing, and then Hashem will do good to you. Rabbi Midrash Yofi says, Chazal have a beautiful drush on this pasuk. When they said Zu Peshara, Rashi also brings this al Torah there. This means to compromise, or and to go within the letter of the law, to go beyond the letter of the law. What does this mean? First it says, keep all the mitzvahs. Now, Yomar, even the matters which Hashem hasn't commanded you, think and put your mind to do what is good and upright in his eyes, because he loves that which is good and upright. This is a big thing, he says. There's a basic problem, says the Ramban. The Torah cannot cover all eventualities, cannot cover in the text all eventualities of neighbors and people bordering each other, and any situation like that, or masal matan, any trade deals, anything that goes on between countries and between neighbors. It's impossible. But now that the Torah has mentioned a lot of them, could go in Silach Rochel, not to speak Rechilus, lo sikam v'lo sitar, not to take revenge, and to bear a grudge, not to stand by cause a problem to your friend, not to stand by the shedding of your fellow's blood, stand up before an elderly person, etc., etc. We now have this general rule to do that which is good and upright in every respect. until you go in this to compromise and within the and beyond the strict letter of the law. And that which the example, and a classic example of this is this idea of dinner bar mitzvah, of someone who is a neighbor and therefore has first rights. Even those things he says where, is to speak pleasantly with people, that's all included in being Yashar and Tov. Okay? Now, this is a very important, I was going to stop there. This is a very, very important thing. It's very difficult to define. We're now in an area of halacha, right, which is beyond the strict letter of the law. This guy, okay, has bought a parcel of land legally, legitimately, right? And no one disputes that. Runya has paid the money here. Yet, nevertheless, Ravina can come along and say, listen, it's only fair that I have land already in this place. The principle of Bar Mitzvah is that the costs are massively less when I can have all my land in one place, right? Base ABC, right? If I want to buy a block of flats and I can manage it with one manager, yeah, I'm clearly going to make a lot more money than if I have an individual flat in 5 different places and I've got to pay 5 different people to look after those flats or to sell or market those flats. You understand, right? It's simple, yeah? Basic, yeah? It's business that even rabbis can do. So this is it. So the point is that's the rule of Bar Mitzvah. But at the end of the day, what the Ramban al Torah is telling us is that it follows slightly different rules to the halacha, because it's an appeal to people's yashrus, right? It's menschlichkeit, really. I can't legally force you, can I? Or maybe you can. Dinner Bar Mitzvah I think it's a legal right. Yeah, Richie.
But 1 second, the sale has already happened here.
Yes.
So there's a big jump. I mean, even under Sisa Tova Yosha, that mitzvah is on the seller. So what's the havamina that Ravina can actually force Runya to sell? Even under Vasisa Tova Yosha, there's a big logical jump that I'm not seeing. Mimela, a seller has to give the next door neighbor a first right refusal.
Yeah,
that you should undo a sale.
So that's right. That's right. It's an incredible thing. So I think, this is obviously this is a big sugya, but I think that the basic principle of the Bar Mitzvah is that it seems to be a responsibility on the buyer. So in other words, the buyer, right, is the one. Yeah, the buyer has to give up the land. Okay. So I've got I've got here. I might be able to actually show you this. Just 1 second as well. Let's see if I can find this. I've got here Shulchan Aruch. Let's see. No, not that one. Not this one. Not this one. Here's one I prepared earlier. Here we go. Look. So the Shulchan Aruch says, see, look at this, right? This is the Shulchan Aruch on this halacha. Okay, the basic principle of mitzvah. Can you see where my mouse is? Yeah, someone who sells it's an old Shulchan Aruch. Sorry, old fashioned. Someone who sells to someone else. Whether you sell it or your shliach sells it. Sell it. So his friend who's on the border can he has the right to give money to the buyer and remove him. So you're right. Yeah, it's an incredible thing. He's gotten paid money, but he has a right to do it. Even if the buyer is a Talmud Chacham and he's a neighbor, he's a good shochin and he's related to the seller, all the time as the people would think of. But when the guy who's the Meitz is an Amoritz, he's very far from the Meicha. The Meitz comes first and he removes the buyer. Okay. Now, Maybe says what the Moshe even if the seller says he doesn't want to sell to him. Yeah, I think there's a major debate in the Rishonim, and I haven't seen this in detail, about whether it's a sort of responsibility on the buyer or the seller. But either way, you can see that even if the seller's taken place, yeah, it's a right to remove him. But the truth is, and by the way, whilst we're here, hold on a second, let me just.
And that's all from this Gemora, or there are other Gemoras?
No, the other Gemoras. The main Gemora about dinner of Bar Mitzvah is in Bava Metzia. Where is it? Bava Metzia. I mean, this piece of Shulchan Aruch is from the Rambam, but the main thing is in. I think it's in Bava Metzia Kabul. I think somewhere like that. I think that's what it says there. Anyway, yeah. So no, the main sugya is elsewhere, but you can't understand this Gemara without it. But I just want to show you this smart. That's the other thing I wanted to show you here. I highlighted it here. So can you see this? Yeah. So the smart says din meitzron. Can you see it? Yeah. Din meitzronas. This din of being the border. Any one of he quotes it from where the Shulchan Aruch talks about. Klal Talmud meitzronas. He says, what is the basic principle here? Shebesimen zehu midikos of Rachmana v'asisa tova yashar. Because the Torah says v'asisa tova yashar. We learn from them. Hashem wants us to act beyond the letter of the law. Even though the Lokech has gone and bought a field, that's a very important point. Since he is able to buy elsewhere, and the other people around, there is a direct benefit for them so that they can have their fields close together. He can remove them. Okay, they are called the people on the borders because that's where they are, etc., etc., etc. So the very important point here, which the Smart alludes to, which I think is discussed much more extensively, is there's one guiding principle about dinner of the Mitzvah. And that is, it must be a situation where the Moicha and the Lokeach are not going to lose out through this. Yeah. That means to say, if the Lokeach cannot buy anywhere else for whatever reason, or maybe it could be even if the price would be inflated. Yeah, I'm not sure how far it goes. I don't know. It's like a whole simon in Shulchan Aruch, right? So probably it's all worked through. But the principle is that there's no loss to the Moicha and the Lokeach. The Moicha has still sold this property because this other guy's coming along with the money, and the Lokeach will get the money and can just buy another one. It's basically saying that, lama long. That's what he's doing. He's turning around.
Yeah.
Exactly. He's saying, listen, you didn't need your field here. Yeah. There's other fields for sale down the road. Yeah. And this is so important to me because I live here and I have my property and my other fields are here. So let me buy this one as well. Are you with me?
And what's the time period within that has to happen? So
okay, so I'm sure this all. I'm sure this is exactly what is what plays out in this exactly how. I think there is a definite time period. I think it's got to be done very quickly. I saw somewhere where this was discussed. There won't be any delays. If there would be and whatever, then exactly. It's very easy. Let's be clear. It's very easy for the bar metzah, the one who's coming along and trying with his claim, to lose his rights. Okay, it's a right that is easily lost if there are delays, losses, or whatever. And in fact, it goes even further than that. If the guy who is the bar metzah wants to build, wants it as a place to farm animals, and the guy who bought it, who's not the neighbor, right, the one who paid the money, right, and he's trying to remove him, wants to build property for living in. So I think the halacha is he comes first either way, because we go after, because the yishuv ha'olam, buying land for people to live in, is of a greater significance than someone who wants it to farm his animals. So that's also taken into account, right? The usage that the land's going to be put to. But I was going to look at this in a second before we just see this, the Rashi here. I just want to take a step back and look at this from the position, like a sort of meta position, on a grand scale. Okay, lahavdil. Every system of law, legal system, needs ethical underpinning. And that's why this is so fascinating, right? You know, there's the law, there's a halacha, A, B, C, D, but then there's the you know, I call the philosophy behind the halacha. This is what the Torah is saying. Yes, of course you can come along and say, I paid the money, I want this field here. Torah says, think, is this yashrus? Is this the right way to behave? Right? It's an incredibly important principle. And that feeds into halacha. That becomes part of the halacha. It's not like, you know, you can't detach the two. The way ethically you're supposed to live your life becomes a part of the halacha through halacha just din bar mitzvah. Okay?
Yeah. One question. I think in the text it was written ifni mishurat adin.
Yeah.
But we say it's actually the din.
Well, yes, that's right. That's right. It's an incredible thing. You can have something which is lifnim mishuras adin. By the way, that's a very strange phrase as well.
Yeah.
You know, lifnim means within, but it's really without. But anyway, yeah. So, and actually, we're taking something that says lifnim mishuras adin, and it's becoming the din. It's actually becoming the halacha. That's right. The truth is, again, this is just a massive topic. But you know, my PhD is in. It was in. To bring this in this. Is in the tshuvas of Ramosha and of Henkin and whatever. And one of the things that I spent a number of years going through, you know, tshuvas and in great detail. And one of the things that comes out so clearly is that there are facts that become part of the halacha. In the halachic decision-making process, they become a part of the halacha. Right? Now, that's not exactly the same as here. That's a cheshbon of a posek where it has to take into account, you know, public policy and how people are going to react and what conclusions they would make. You know, we understand that those type of things, right? When Ramosha was deciding about, you know, issues to do with mechitza or to do with whatever it was, you know, these are all part of the cheshbon. This, you're right, is much more than that. This is a siman in choshen mishpat, right? You know, absolutely, it's a siman in choshen mishpat, right? So yeah, you're right. Martin. You had a question, Rob? No?
I was going to ask exactly what Shlomo just asked. So thanks, Shlomo.
Yeah, how it becomes part of the halacha. Again, as I said, this is a massive sugya. It really is. You know, it's a massive sugya. But I think what it demonstrates to us is that yes, it does. you know, there's no. People often try when it comes to halacha to divorce things and say, but that's not really halachic. You often hear that, yeah. You know, when people try and argue things, I hear this all the time, right? It's one of the reasons it's one of the reasons I found what I did, spent that long time on the research so fascinating, because people so often say, but it's not really halachic. Show me where it says in Shulchan Aruch, I'll tell you, okay? So the answer is that comes from a position of ignorance, of not understanding what halachic decision-making is, okay? And a great proof of it is this Gemora, okay? This becomes part of the halacha, okay? So anyways, there's the story.
It becomes quite subjective, though, because what is Hayoshav Atov in one person's eyes, let's say Hayoshav Atov in someone else's eyes.
It becomes complicated. Absolutely, it becomes complicated, and we'll see in this Gemara, this story is a great example of that, because logically, Ravina, according to everything I've said until now, right? Ravina should have had the right to remove him, yet he doesn't, and we have to understand why. Right? In this case, he wasn't. That right wasn't afforded to him. The question is why. Okay. So let's see. Rashi.
Does this apply to a landlord and a tenant? So let's say you got a Jewish landlord and a Jewish tenant. The landlord wants to sell his property. I don't know if you know off the top of your head, but halacha l'maisa, does the landlord have to offer first right of purchase to the tenant?
So basically. So basically, in Rashi and Tosfos, we've got like about 13 minutes. We'll see what we can get through. Sorry. There are 5 different pshatim in this Gemara. Okay, the 5th will answer your question. So we'll see if we get there. I think the 5th will answer your question. All right. So let's.
Is this just a mitzvah for Eretz Yisrael, by the way?
Pardon?
Is this a halacha for Eretz Yisrael only, or is it for
I don't think so. I might be mistaken, but again, I might be mistaken. Always when you open a sugya like this, you know, you never say never, because as I said, there's multiple simonim in Shulchan Aruch, and I have not go there. Literally, I've just seen. I've tried to see what I thought would be helpful to understand this sugya. I hadn't seen
why
it.
Do you think it would only apply to Eretz Israel? Eli, why do you only think it should apply to Eretz Israel?
I don't think so.
Well, that was my first thought, but then I thought, what if there's goyim involved? How on earth could you enforce this?
Okay, but
enforceability is a different issue. Exactly, whether you can enforce and how that would work in terms of the civil law. Yeah, that's a different issue. Yeah, enforceability. Yeah. Okay, so let's see Rashi. There's a long Rashi here. Rashi says, "Arbod letzila v'dala letzila." Has everyone got that right? There's the long Rashi in the middle. Ani shomati says Rashi. Rashi says, "I heard tzila is a ratzon oni." I think a ratzon is someone who works the. I think he's the tanner. I think, yeah. Or he's I don't know if he's the tanner. I think he's the person who basically, maybe he might be the person who buys the skins or something like that and gives them to the person who does the tanning and works the skins, right? He deals in leather, basically. So each one, a tzela is a ratzon oni, a tzilala ratzon osher, and a tzilala is a ratzon osher. And so one is poor, and the first one is a poor one, and the second one is a wealthy one. The kach omaloi, and this one of Safra said to Ravina, arba kikoros shrichin l'ratzon oni. You have this poor guy who works with leather. He needs 4 loaves of bread to feed his house liyom per day. Just like a rich guy needs, just like a rich guy working leather. There's no difference. It's the same amount of food. And this guy, Runya, is poor. And he needs the field for his livelihood. He needs it for his own living. And just like you are saying to him, go away from me, leave the field to me, because it's on my border, because you're arguing. The Torah says, be yashar, do the right thing, be upright. So to you, I say yashar v'tov la'anizeh. You do the right thing to this poor guy, v'al tasalkeyu, and don't remove him. Okay, so the first shot is that Rav Safra says, like I said to you before, the parameters of this halacha are very limited. You're appearing to, what's the right thing to do, yashrus wise. So Ravina is saying, what do you mean, yashrus? I should get it. It's on my border. Rav Safra says, no, because I can turn around to you here and say the same thing and say, no, the right thing here is to let him have it. Because he's so poor and he needs the money. He needs the panos, and it'll be difficult for him to get another field or something like that. And therefore he said, leave it for him. Rashi says, v'yesh legamge, right? He says, there's a problem with this because the ha'or korit tzila v'lo ratzon. It's the leather that's called tzila, and not the person who deals with the leather or works with the leather. Ba'alma, we say, my dargish arsa the tzila brings a Gemora in Nedarim that clearly implies that it's the leather itself which is called, or the skin itself is called tzila. And therefore he says that can't be that we're talking here that Ravina and Runya, the moshel here cannot be referring to people who work with leather. V'omer ani, and he says, I say, says Rashi, Runya ratzon hoya. Runya was the ratzon, v'lokech oros, and he bought leather. He used to buy leather, v'nosin oros la'avdonin, and he used to give the leather to the avdonin, the people who work with it, the tanners, la'asos mehem min olin l'moichem l'shuk, to make shoes to sell in the market. V'kachol l'rasafar l'Ravina. So Rav Safra said to Ravina, he'oni zeh, this pauper schoro muot. He's got very little payment. He's got to give a lot of money to the people he pays to process the leather. The Omri Inshi, I'm on the first wide line in the middle of Rashi. The Omri Inshi, because people say, you got to pay 4 zuz to buy the leather in the first place, and you pay 4 zuz to process it. V'hainu tzilala. And that's what the tzilala is, the second phrase, arbol tzilala. Therefore, asay yasher tov, do the right thing, and let him have this field to feed his house with. So there isn't really a difference in the first and second pshat in the way we're understanding the Gemara. It's just the translation of these tzilala and tzilala. The first one says that it's a comparison between the 2 players involved. So Ravina's got more money, Runya's got less, and therefore if Safra says, listen, do the right thing, he's a poor guy, let him have the field. The second one is it's all about Runya. And it's simply saying that Runya is someone who has a very shvach business. he doesn't make much money. He's got to spend 4 zuz buying the leather, another 4 zuz sending it off to be processed. And you should do the menschlich thing and let him keep this little bit of land, right? That's the second shot. Now the next is not really Rashi. They say it is the Masoret Hashas says it's a Hagos, so it's probably from the Rashbam. Veliner, he says Dalad l'tzila Dalad kikaro soich la'abdon oni v'Dalad l'tzila. 4 loaves you need for a person who's poor who's working the leather. V'Dalad l'tzila. And you need 4 loaves of bread for the tzilaloch. And you need you need 4 loaves of bread for a person who's wealthy who's working the leather. A moshel connected runya, and this is a moshel referring to runya. Runya, we know from the previous Gemora, had 1 field amongst all the fields of Ravina. The Ravina surrounded them on 4 sides. But now he's bought a field next to Ravina's border. So, you can picture it, right? Remember, we said Runya had this field in the middle. He's bought a field on the other side of Ravina's property. Ravina's property is in between the 2. V'amalei Rav Safra Ravina, and Rav Safra said to Ravina, Sheyasa Yoshav HaTov, he says to Ravina, you should do the right thing, La'niach l'Runya osa, that Runya, to leave that field, osa soda to Ravina, to leave that field to Runya, to Achshav Yelo Shnayim, because now he's going to have 2. Now he's going to have 2. Just like you need to guard 2 fields, so you need the same amount of guarding for 1 field, that's 2. And in many respects, that the expenditure on 1 is as much as the expenditure on 2. So Runya is going to profit from this. Basically, what he's saying is, Ravina comes along and says, this field is on next to my field, so I should have first rights. Okay? So Rav Safra says, no, because Runya also has another field right next to yours in the middle, and therefore he is saving money by having, albeit your field in the middle, but he's got 2 fields in quite close proximity, so he can set up like a watchtower and put someone there who can watch both fields at once, over yours. And therefore, the moshel of the loaves of bread, is that you need 4 loaves of bread for someone who has less, and similarly 4 loaves for someone who has more. If he's got more property, he's still going to pay the same amount of money to look after it. Therefore, let him have the 2 fields together so he can save and he can profit in that way. Yeah, is that clear?
Yeah. So according to this Perush, there is no bar matzah at all because he's also have other lands.
Well, he's not really. That's the thing. This shows how limited according to all of the explanations, right? Whether we go with Rashi or the Rashbam, whatever it is, you see the limitations in this idea of bar mitzvah. Richie, you correctly said it's an incredible thing. Someone's bought land and someone's come along and say, "Excuse me, I get rights. I can buy it off you. I have the right to buy from." So you see, it's very limited in scope. Right, very limited in the rights.
But then this is the question: is Rav Safra tell Ravina you are not allowed to take it despite Rav Matzah because the guy is poor, so it's not bar matzah, or we tell him forget about this guy, leave him alone. You can take it. You have the right to take it, but you shouldn't take it. It's not exactly.
It's not so clear, is it? Right? He's saying to him again. It seems to be he's appealing to his better. Side. He's saying to him, like you're saying, you've got a right to it because of Asisa, Asisa Yoshev Tov, right? You're saying you've got a right to it, and I'm saying to you that really, you shouldn't be, you shouldn't. You want to come along with this idea of Asisa Yoshev Tov, and I'm going to say to you, no, there's no real Asisa Yoshev Tov here, right?
No.
Because the Asisa Yoshev Tov can be argued against you as well. But whether or not
it's interesting, they went to a different base in the second time round. Ravina obviously didn't want to go back to Rova. He went to a different
yeah, that could be. Yeah, indeed. But there is a it does seem to be a formal right generally though in this idea of bar mitzvah. So it's interesting that he could say to him, was he saying formally you're not allowed, or was he saying this is not the right thing to do? Okay. I just want to see Tosos very quickly. We don't have time to see all inside, but just to understand, basically, Tosos has a fascinating question. Look at this. The next Tosos, Abal Etzila v'chulu. He says, "Lepirush hakunshus Maksha Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam asks a very straight and penetrating question on Rashi. Ha'ein merachamim b'din. Yeah, you don't have mercy in din. Or rachmonas. Ravina is a bar mitzvah. You know, he comes along and he says, I'm entitled to this field. That's my right. So what on earth is he coming along, Rav Safra, with this? You see clearly, it was saying, no, listen, be a mensch, poor men, 4 loaves of bread for him. What do you mean? Well, you know why? Not merachmim adin. In halacha, he's entitled to it. So it's amazing the interplay between, you know, how much do you appeal to people's, listen, I know you're entitled to it, but do the right thing, be a mensch. You know, we do this all the time, right? This is all playing out in the sugya, okay? You know, when do you fall back on your entitlement? Now, he brings another question as well. He says that Ravina thought to remove him, means that Ravina seems to imply Ravina made a mistake. What mistake did he make? And then he asks another question. I'm just sort of paraphrasing, we don't have time to sit all inside. He says, was this story, it's got to do with the previous one? Okay, you know, according to Rashi, this has nothing to do with the previous case, right? Nothing to do with the previous case. And if you're saying it's just listing all stories between Ravina and Runya, well, there's another one above Metzia about Ravina was actually he was the Oris. Runya was the Oris. He used to work for Ravina. He didn't own land. He used to work for it. He worked for Ravina. And he brings other questions as well. And then about 2 lines when it gets narrow, Rabbeinu Tam says that the case is like this. Rabbeinu Tam, the Zovan Ara Amitzod Ravina. What does he mean he bought land on the border of Ravina? Yeah. So basically what happened was that you had, I mean, it's difficult to explain this. Let me just see. How can I explain this? I can explain it like this. 1 second. Basically, this is the case, okay? This is the case, right? Can you see my screen? Yeah? Right? That's Ravina. This is Runya in the middle here, okay? This is Ravina. Now, this was Runya's field, okay? This is Runya's field. We thought before that's all owned by Runya. It wasn't, okay? This is all by Ravina here. All of that over there, and this was owned by someone else, okay? And it's that property there which came up for sale now, okay? Are you with me? So this is why it's directly related to the previous case. Ravina was the border on 3 sides. Runya is bordering this field on 1 side. Ravina is the matron from their side, but Runya is the border guy from 1 side, okay? Now, Ravina thought, I've got more right than you because I border it, I border it on 3 sides, right? Oh, not technical, I don't know how to use this, sorry. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We get the idea, right? We get the idea. I'm on the rubber now. Do you have the rubber? Okay, I don't know. Anyway, but basically, this is the idea. Ravina thought I've got more of a right because I'm on 3 sides. It's gone completely now. Anyway, you get the idea. He thought I've got more of a right because I'm 3 sides. And Runya says, and Runya has only 1 side. Rav Safra said to him, no, because you give 4 loaves to. You have to pay as much, not loads. You have to pay, 4 loaves for a large piece of leather as you do for a small piece of leather. Okay, there's as much trouble with a small field as a small piece of leather as a large piece of leather. Here as well says, it's about halfway through that main paragraph. It says, "My time of dinner to bar mitzvah." What's the logic? The whole logic is you should have to plow all your fields in one go. So therefore, that logic means it makes no difference, right? Whether you border the field on 1 side or all 3. It's a beautiful pshat, Rabbeinu Tam. It's beautiful, right? Runya is 1 side. It fits with the previous story. It makes sense why it's here. It's incredible, right? The Runya is bordering the field on 1 side. Ravina is on 3 sides. Ravina says, "I'm 3-side border. You're only 1. You should give it to me." Says Rav Safra, no, whole logic about mitzvah so you can plow it in one go. Well, he's got the same argument. The fact that it's only on 1 side, but he wants to do these 2 fields in one go. And then finally, the 5th pshat is Rabbi Avram Pirish, the Hach Ara, the Zovan Runya, Mitzvah, Ravina, Haina, Mitzvah, the Osen Sodasha, Runya, Oris Bohen. Runya, okay, bought land he bought land on the border of Ravina, that means that Runya was a sharecropper. He was a worker for Ravina, okay? And that's a Gemora of Metzia. And Rav Safra said to Ravina, even though Runya doesn't own the land physically, because he works the land, he's considered to be a mitron as well. Because people say that just like you have to give for the person, you give, basically you pay for the leather and you pay for the person who works the leather. Okay. And therefore, the fact he's also got the rights of bar mitzvah, even he's only the oris, he doesn't actually own land, he's only the sharecropper. So that comes to your point, Richie, right? About also having a right, even if you don't physically own the land. Whether a tenant is quite the same as an oris, I'm not sure. But either way, there's your five pshotim. But this is a beautiful little tiny sugya, 4 lines, and so much in it, right? Insight into an incredible area of halacha. Anyone got any questions, or we're all okay for the moment?
Surely, given the personalities that we're dealing with, as we said earlier, they have to be lifnei mishurat adin, and therefore you can't really learn halacha from them. I don't mean that they're regular mishurat adin. I mean they're tanaim amoraim lifnei mishurat adin.
Well, they're not. They're. When you say that, I mean no. But the question is, you see, this is Rabbeinu Tam's whole problem. Rabbeinu Tam's problem with Rashi was exactly the point that was troubling you, right? You know, he's coming along. The halacha is bar mitzvah. It's from Shulchan Aruch. Comes along and says, "Listen, be nice to him." What do you mean? Ein marachim badin. The halacha. You don't have to. Why should you have rachmanas din? If Rabbeinu Tam gives a whole pshat that makes both of them bar mitzvah, so therefore it is in halacha. Either way, the halacha of bar mitzvah is a halacha. Let's be clear. Even though it's from Basisa Yoshev Tov, it's not a be Mr. Nice Guy. Yeah, it's a halacha, but it's it's a right that is very limited, because at the end of the day, you know, if there is a reason not to act in this way, then you're not being yashar. You know, there's a logic here. You know, I'm going to lose loads of money if I sell it to the other guy, or if you buy it, or whatever it is. So there you are. Yeah. Very good. Okay. Thanks all. Shkoyach. We'll meet the next time. All right. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Good evening.
Okay.